Good evening and welcome to another episode of VI Voices. I'm Emile Henderson III along with my other panelists, Natalie Nelson, Tang and Clint Ferris.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight on our show we have candidates for the Board of Education who will be vying for a seat in this year's election in 2012. Tonight on the show we have with us Mr. Kassan Baptiste, we have Mr. Terrence T. Joseph, we have Mr. Cyril Levine, and Attorney Marshall Webster. The other individuals that we had asked, which I believe were Mary Moorhead, Janae Williams, and Yvonne Peterson, they have all indicated, well, they could not be here tonight. And so we are here with who is here, and I'm sure that you would enjoy hearing what they're about and help you to make a decision as to whether or not these are individuals that you can vote for in 2012 to serve on the Board of Education. But before we get to them, we will start out, as we always do, with our hot topics. And our first hot topic is the weekend shootings.
Weekend violence.
If you look at it, I think we have to look, and I think we have a very good topic tonight, education. And I think you hinted on that a few shows back, that everything is connected, that Absolutely. Education and crime is connected. I think we have education, crime, and the economy. All of that is connected. And if you think about it right now, because we're in a down economy, we are seeing more and more crimes. I believe we are seeing violent crimes, but I believe robberies are to have an effect, especially a psychological effect on people. And those things are affecting our community widespread.
Well, of course, because we're now developing a have and have nots kind of society, and what ends up happening is that those who don't have anything start to see those who do, and so rather than go work for it, they just take it from you. But the problem that we have with that is that we have a lot of our young people who are, or I shouldn't just young people alone, but a lot of our members in our community who are not educated, and they can't get employment, even if they wanted to go out and actually get employment and work.
And that's a good point, Emile, because for me, the shooting this weekend comes very close to home. Two of the people involved on both sides happen to be clients.
You're busy.
One of the alleged suspects has spent most of his adult life in prison, okay? And it ties right back into the education, or the lack thereof. Additionally, the other gentleman who lost his life was holding down two jobs, trying to make ends meet for his family. And he, again, fell victim to this vicious system that we're living in. I mean, this is a very, very small territory that we live in, right?
Right.
Yet still, per capita, we are one of the highest U.S. territories when it comes to per capita for crimes, particularly homicides.
And that includes New York,
That's
Chicago,
right. Unbelievable.
Los Angeles.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Per 100,000 persons per capita, United States, Virgin Island, with about 100 and how much thousand people?
110.
Yeah, but if you think about it, remember last night we were discussing that bill being proposed to, for the correction officers. Think about all phases of the criminal justice system. Something is going wrong.
Well, it's on both sides, because not only do we have to start having programs that serve a preventive measure to keep them out of the prisons, what I think a lot of us don't recognize is that the prison system really is supposed to be a system to rehabilitate and get you back into society, so you don't come back.
Correct.
Supposed to.
But that's
the opposite effect we're having here and in most other jurisdictions, because they go in and they learn a lot more about how to be a criminal.
And it's a vicious cycle, because it becomes a cycle in, out, and you'll notice most of these people involved in these alleged criminal activity are either out on bail, out on pre-trial or some sort of release, or have some connection to the system. And unfortunately, one of the things that really hurts my heart is the young black men, because I'm a mother of sons, I don't have any daughters, and when I see these young men constantly in the system, in and out, it tells me that there is an injustice somewhere, and our young men are under attack to the point that they're going to become extinct.
Well, every time I'm in court for a common call, the jury, that's where they put most of them, it's all young men. All
young men under the age of 25.
See, and that's a challenge. So the lack of rehabilitation, and even prevention, and that's what you're talking about. Even the school system.
But you know what?
Are they really working to inspire these young men,
Clint,
to want better?
These young men drop out of school on the average by 7th grade. That's the reality of it. These young men in
Or at least they
Virgin
become
Islands,
disinterested in education.
they no longer have any desire to learn anything other than the streets.
Well, it's a good thing tonight's show. We have
Board
education because it ties right back in,
ties
right?
into them and what they can do
Yes.
to turn that around, to ensure that we are creating people or rearing people in this community to do well and become productive citizens. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it turns out. But, you know, we'll see. But it's going to be very interesting because I say that because our crime rate, I think our murders are up to 36 or 37.
37.
One of them being a vehicular homicide, I think. But, you know, we're only in August.
Yeah.
Correct, but if you think about it, you talk about the murder rate, but talk about the other crimes.
Oh, yeah.
Because you think about murder is the final act.
Right.
When you do home invasions, robberies, and holding people up at gunpoint, that also leads to psychological effects. And then people become shut in. So those things are long-standing, and it affects our community way down the road.
No.
So we need to be mindful of that.
Last night, I had a conversation with some of the producers of this show in regards to what happened at Cane Bay this weekend, and they were saying that the guys came in and put everyone on the ground and told them, you know, put your stuff out. And last night I was like, well, I wasn't going on the ground because I worked too hard for myself and I wasn't giving anything up, and I wasn't going to go down to the floor to do anything, right? So I watched the news. That was last night. That was last night. And then I watched the news and I understand that they were like AK-47s
Oh my gosh.
shots and all this other stuff. And I thought about it. I said, you know what? I might have to rethink my thoughts about not wanting to give up what belongs to me.
Yep.
This is just, you know, things.
It's all material. Those things can be replaced, but our dairy meal here, we do not want to lose you.
I agree. I don't want to lose me either.
All right. One of you, one of a kind, right?
I know. Now let's talk about national news now. Let's talk about Mr. Aiken and his comments that the female body.
Well, you know, gentlemen, just before you even go there, let me put a disclaimer out since I'm the only female hosting this thing here. What in the world? Why are we even? Anyway, you go ahead and make a comment.
He says that the female body has a mechanism to shut down and stop or prevent, I should say, pregnancy for legitimate rape.
What planet you living on?
I don't know.
I know I attended biology class.
I did
and I
too.
can't remember that particular lesson. Tell me that organ in the female's body that does that.
Well, he's a male.
For
so
legitimate rape.
No,
Get it
give him
right.
an excuse
Because
because he's
there's
male.
a kind of rape that's not legitimate. I don't understand.
The argument
So in
is
other
so
words, if you're
ridiculous.
really being raped, then your body will shut down because your body knows that you're really
So
being
you
raped.
can't get pregnant.
So you can't get pregnant.
But if you're not,
But if
really
you're kind of being raped,
meaning that you're
then you can't get
consenting,
pregnant.
Hey,
it's ridiculous.
he believes it. If you notice, he said it was rather fluid. It came out of his mouth like ABC.
Yeah.
So I do believe he believed exactly what he was saying.
Listen,
it was not maybe
listen.
comments now are stupid, but
Listen,
he meant
gentlemen.
them.
Now, what's interesting is that a couple of days ago, the Republicans were all like, well, some were like that, get him off. Mitt Romney, however, was like, no, he has a right to be if he wants to vote. But I understand now today, once
I saw
again,
it.
he's flip-flopped and he's saying
backing out
he
on
needs
it.
to come out of the race.
So he's straddling the political fence again.
He always does it, so I'm not surprised about it.
You know, gentlemen, listen. Rape is an act of violence. Period. Non-stop. There's nothing else that you can try to justify when it comes to rape. So all this what rationalizing about legitimate, shut down, shut up, doesn't fly.
But remember, there was a time in some southern states that wives could not be raped, even if they technically under the law for everybody else,
Yeah, but in
they
this,
were.
in this 21st century,
And
that's
so
what
a lot of
we
those laws have been abolished.
archaic. In the Virgin Islands too. You remember that recent
right,
case law
right.
that we have that is
Where-
VI Supreme Court brought down?
Yeah,
recently?
correct.
That women aren't property.
Even
Women
though
are
you
not
may have the
property.
paper, definitely she's not property. So
Right.
that's
Well, okay, well,
So
I'm
much
sure
for
we'll
that
follow up with
argument.
that. But we will return as we will have Mr. Terrence T. Joseph on our show, who is a current member of the Board of Education and seeking re-election. And we'll be back in a moment with Mr. Joseph. Welcome back. We are here with Terrence T. Joseph, let's make sure we get the T in there so we don't mistake him for anybody else, who is a current member of the Board of Education and is currently seeking re-election in the 2012 election. Mr. Joseph, thank you for being here on Their Voices tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Now, we have been, as you were here for when we were discussing our hot topics, one of the issues had to deal with, you know, the correlation, I believe, is between crime and education. Now, you've been on the board for how long?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
For about 4 years. But you are no stranger to education.
Absolutely.
Tell the audience a little bit about who you are.
My name is Terrence T. Joseph. I have been a teacher for 4 years at the St. Croix Central High School. I was assistant principal for 5 years at Arthur A. Richards Junior High School. I was principal of Arthur Richards for 16 years. Then I was superintendent of schools for 7 years. After retiring, I ran for a seat in 2008 for the Board of Education, and I'm currently a member of the Board of Ed and seeking re-election.
Now, what do you plan if you were, well, in other words, let me do it this way. What have you done in the 4 years that you've been on the board relative to having a strong voice on the Board of Education, not only for the territory, but primarily for the District of St. Croix?
Thanks for that question, because I think it's a very good question. I ran in 2008 talking about transparency, and I was able to achieve that. Currently on the board, I have never missed a board meeting, nor my committee meetings. I have here that you can peruse that at your own time, because I'm the chair of the School Plan and Facilities Committee, co-chair. I served with, along with Julie Gomez, Esquire, as co-chair in the St. Thomas St. John District. And that committee, because the Board of Education have 4 standing committees, we talk about the relevancy of education, and I think you made a point, the correlation between education and our crime rate. And we thought and think if we have relevancy, people will more adapt to certain things. If it's relevant to them. For example, you know, when you were a student at Arthur Richards and student council president, and you're the first student that had a strike against me.
He's telling all your business.
I know, right? All out of the door.
And again, it was good because you have young people talking. Because I really go back to my own age group, because you voted today at 18 because of people like me, because we protest vehemently to bring the age up to 18, because at the time the Vietnam War was at its heights. And if you could go to fight in Vietnam at 18, you certainly can vote then.
Absolutely.
There was a time when in the Virgin Islands, you couldn't go to any and every beach. You could go to Colonel's Park and some other place relegated. And our age group spend a lot of time to make sure we have every beach open to everybody on the island. So you can go to any place you want.
Mr. Joseph, if I may, this is the year 2012, and the new buzzword right now, especially in the national race, is a new economy. Coming out of what took place, the recession and whatnot, they say there's been a realignment of forces, and there's a new economy emerging. How do we now align the school curriculum with this new economy that our people and our students who are leaving the school system can be prepared to take full advantage of opportunities coming out of that economy?
Can I just say one thing that Attorney Henderson, we're talking about bullying.
Yes.
That's something that we have achieved. We have a bullying policy that this current board has placed in every school. There's a bullying policy, because we know some people drop out of school because they're being bullied.
Right.
And we make sure we have that.
And we are definitely strong advocates against bullying here.
Right. And we have also our neighborhood policy that we have promulgated. But what this current 16 board has done is to address this issue, that we, along with the career and technical board, have met over the years, over last year, and we now completed our program to fuse what's good for voc ed and the career technical along with the academics. So we have a chance In other words, people now are more technologically savvy. You see, there's little children could play around with their stuff like crazy. So rather than having them stay in school for another year to learn this again, they test out and they can move on to something else, something more advanced or something that is more relevant to them. So the Board of Education, along with the Technical Board, have done this for graduation requirements. So opening up school 2013, the freshman students going through the public schools will now have a new requirements. But prior to us doing this, we're not just going to implement it. We dealt with the Career Technical Board and our board. Now we're going to the community because the parents and students must buy it. Mr. Cliff must buy it.
But Mr. Joseph, I think it was mentioned earlier that a big transition in our young men, and especially a lot of people's life in education, comes at middle school or junior high school. Typically, historically, at 8th grade, we had a large flight of people from the public schools, and they dropped out. Is there a push to make sure that our kids are adequately prepared for careers and for life at 8th grade?
Certainly. You know that in the public school system, we have more boys at the junior high school level than girls.
Really?
In spite of what you're hearing.
In spite of the
Statistically, we have more boys in territory-wide in
That's
junior high
interesting.
school than girls.
In the Virgin Islands?
In the Virgin Islands,
That's very
yes. I mean,
interesting.
I have the report here that you can peruse that. I love the junior high schools because that's the kind of disgusting age. But you can be disgusting, and I don't mind that. There's a difference between disgusting and doing what you're supposed to do. And this is why I didn't want, let's say, I had a reputation to say, I will suspend you. But at the same time, I give you a choice. You don't have to be suspended. You come to school on Saturday and meet me, where you will do your punishment for the suspension, and it will work detailed. And it worked well. And people who went to Arthur Richard can say that. The junior high school is a disgusting age, and so to speak. And that's the age we have to hold our students. We have to hold them. Because sometimes you have to be dictatorial. I know that people prefer, well, it's my life and it's my this. But sometimes you have to say, you want to do that. Yeah. Because if Emile Henderson, and I always admire his mom and dad, they come to PTA meeting together, okay? And they're not going to come to school.
Even when I didn't tell them that they were having
yeah, right, they find anyway. Yeah,
somehow they still
they used to come together.
But it told you the difference in the outcome of the students and the quality of, eventually the end product. But what I want to ask you is, we still have social promotion, particularly in the public school. That's a big problem. What, if anything, is the Board of Education doing to stop that? I mean, it's an injustice to those young people.
The Board of Education promulgate the policies for the Department of Education with a policy arm. We can come up with a policy if we want to, and the department don't want to implement that policy. They could say you just did it.
Well, it seems to me that that's some legislation that we need to advocate for.
Yes.
Hopefully we can get that done. But Mr. Ruther, we're a little out of time. But what I want you to do quickly, so let the audience know, why should they vote for you to be reelected to the Board of Education?
And how to reach you.
Yes, well, I'm listed in the telephone book. 513-4885 is my cell number. I have achieved what I have, more or less what I wanted to. The board is the transparency I'm talking about, the relevancy of the curriculum, the change of graduation requirement that I wanted. We all have that. We have the bulletin policy. We have a lot of stuff that we have worked on. Unfortunately, only 5 of our schools and St. Paul has made the AYP, the advanced yearly progress. Only 4 of our schools. And some of our schools have not met it, not because our students can't do it, but because of the subgroups. Some schools have the Spanish-speaking language students. That it's not that the Spanish language students we have now in a lot of schools are just coming into the island. So if they are now part of that subgroup, it helps back your kind of overall AYP.
Okay.
So again, I'm seeking another term, and I think that in this term, I would have more time to work on the board governance.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Because
Thank you
Good
so
luck.
much for being on
Thank
the
you
show
for
with
being
us.
here. Sure.
And we'll be right back. Good evening, and we are here at VI Voices as we have candidates from the Board of Education who are seeking a seat with us tonight. Tonight we have Mr. Cyril Levine, who is seeking a seat on the Board of Education in the 2012 election. Mr. Levine, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome.
Absolutely.
It's a special occasion.
Please tell the audience a little bit of who you are and why are you seeking the office?
Well, I'm Mr. Levine, or Cyril, they call me Sai as my nickname, but I've worked in education for 40 years, since 1969, as teacher, counselor, administrator, university instructor, and I do quite a bit of volunteer work for several organizations here in the Virgin Islands. And I retired 7 years ago. However, I've been on the I'm an advocate with the Disabilities Rights Center of the Virgin Islands, where I advocate to protect the rights of persons with disabilities, mentally and or physical. But we have a new issue that's cropping up where I want to protect seniors too, because I myself, as a senior citizen, feel we have so much more to give back into this community instead of wasting them in nowhere land, and they don't have an opportunity to give back so much to children and young people, and that's a good way to save the young people today, especially in the junior high school where we have so much of a high dropout rate.
But what do you have to offer? I think what our audience wants to know, especially for those who have not been on the Board of Education before or not currently sitting there, what do you have to offer to the Board of Education to help the children of this community?
Well, for one thing, I have quite a bit of experience in many diverse areas. I speak several languages, and I'm very culturally diverse as well. I lived in Europe. I traveled through China, Asia, and studied their education system, Japan, China, Barbados, the West Indies, and I actually visited the systems and tried to understand how they teach versus how we've been teaching in the Virgin Islands. And every year I go to Spain to do volunteer work as an educator to teach English. And what I could offer is my ability, because of my creativity and my creative background in several different areas, I could offer teachers technical assistance and make learning exciting and more interesting, because the problem is we have today is a serious issue. Children should not come out of school hating learning. They should come out of school loving math and loving language. Instead, they come out hating it. And just with a little piece of paper or a piece of origami or anything you do, musically, whatever, it's amazing some of the things you can do to make them love different areas.
Do you think that that's reason why our young men drop out at the junior high school
Well,
level?
I think there's
High
several
rate?
reasons. That's one of the reasons. But one of the things is that I think men and women that are coming in as professionals are not being trained in female and or male growth and development. I had to be trained in both areas, and it's unfortunate that young people are being educated by mostly female teachers, and they don't understand how young men actually develop. And as a result, we have a very high dropout rate among males, more so than females.
Now,
Yes.
I have a quick question. I'm not sure that I followed that.
Yes.
Or subscribe to that theory. One of the things that I found that has changed over the years, that I think has loaned itself to confusion and to allowing students to not be that interested in work, is this block program that the schools are now following, at least in high schools. When I was in high school, you had 8 classes a day, every day.
Right.
And so you were kept on and moving, and you always had a different day to another day to do work, prepare, and get yourself in order. With this block schedule program, they're not there every day, but they're in the classroom at a longer period of time, a 90-day period, 90-minute period, I believe. And I have, in my experience in dealing, because I volunteer at Central High School, in hearing these children, It's too long. Their minds
I agree
completely
with you.
go
90
after maybe
minutes?
20 minutes,
90
20, 30 minutes, 90 minutes in a classroom.
Yeah, I must confess I agree with you, because I feel that the teaching should be shorter, and activity and what we call active learning should be the majority of the time. That's what I personally believe
Is that
in.
something that you can champion
I
if you were to
champion that,
make it there?
and when I do professional development days for the teachers during professional day, I do just that. Teach them how to be creative and do things with their hands, because my philosophy has always been, especially when I did my graduate studies and my post-graduate studies, was my 4 C's, my famous 4 C's. Be clear, concise, concrete, and the most important, creative. Once you can do that and be creative, it's amazing how you can spark the interest of young men that are dropping out today, because I know I have saved a number of them personally myself.
What changes could you make in the school curriculum? Because there seems to be some deficiencies.
Well-
Did I stole his question? I'm sorry. I started laughing.
Well,
That's what you get for sitting
that
next to
happens to be a
her.
very good question. How do we change that? Well, first of all, it starts at the top and works its way down. Everything starts at the top and works its way down. How do we motivate teachers, and how do we make them more creative? My job at the university, my mission was to, one, evoke, you can't teach, but you can evoke creativity, bring it out, and two, enhance learning. I don't want to see one child failing. When you tell me 30% of the class is failing, how we were taught in school that if the children are failing, the teachers aren't teaching. In other words, the children aren't learning, the teachers aren't teaching. And I remember before we had telephones here in the Virgin Islands.
Okay, wait.
Yes.
I don't think I agree with that. Did you just say that
Say that again.
if the students aren't learning, the teachers aren't teaching?
That's exactly what I said.
Okay, then I don't agree with that.
Well,
But I mean, I'll let you finish.
That's okay.
Go ahead. Well, let me just put a disclaimer. As you know, I represent the teachers, the AFT. I am their lawyer. So let me just put out that disclaimer right now. But I do not subscribe to the fact that if a child isn't learning, then the teacher isn't teaching. I think there are a myriad of other things that may collectively be a part of that. And I'm not saying that every single teacher teaches everybody's child and they're doing great. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm not willing to go as far as if a child isn't learning, then the teacher isn't teaching.
Well, I think Si made a comment.
Yes.
If I may.
Go ahead.
He spoke about development, and he talked about male development and female
Right.
development. I subscribe to
I
the
thought
fact
that
that
was interesting.
in terms of teacher preparation, if you look at what teachers are doing towards getting their degree, they may take an educational psychology class, but how many of them are actually taking human development and talking about different theories like
Thank you.
Chickering, Tinto, and talking about how environment
So-
affect learning.
But then
how-
what happened 20, 30, 40 years ago when the majority of the people were teachers? There were still boys in the classroom.
May I
and they
say
did just
something
fine.
to
They
that?
didn't have no human development.
Many years ago, they were required to take what they call methods courses, and we were required to study male growth and female growth and development, plus required to learn, being that I come from a culturally diverse background, we had to study Spanish and understand the Latino Hispanic culture. We had to understand the West Indian culture and the Black American culture. And we had to learn this and do studies on it and be part of the community, to be part of the culture. And you know me for a long time, and I've always been part of the culture in every culture.
Absolutely.
So are you saying though that if you don't have the male and the female component to it, that's why you lose the young men?
Well, many times, yes. I'll tell you why. Because men generally understand male growth and development oftentimes better than a female will understand it, especially during the junior high school years. And just as a female will understand the female growth and development of their children. And it's something that's very important because, for example, I'll give you a very good example that I had to do a study on with the Hispanic versus West Indian culture. The Latino boys love to fiddle with their hands. The boys I'm talking about, not the girls right now. They love to fiddle with their hands, do things and doodle a lot. And how do you direct this into something constructive, creative, and tangible, concrete? And females have other issues. They like other things at a young age. And many times a female will be very good to teach a female, whereas a good male teacher, if you have one that's trained in these areas, will be able to do that. And there are good female teachers, don't get me wrong, especially female teachers who have raised children.
No,
So-
I would say I do agree that we do need to have a lot more male teachers in our school system.
Yes.
Because they actually become really good role models for our students
That's an
and our
important
males.
point. Role model. Role model.
But we are running.
Out of the
We
time.
run out of time,
Right.
but you know what would help with that? Cut back some of the extra positions that they have in government, the top-heavy positions,
Yes.
and then increase teachers' salaries and make it more.
I'm glad you said that.
Well, I'm being real here.
I'm glad you
Make
said
it more
it.
attractive so teachers want to come in, and then.
And make sure they're good teachers too, not
good
just any old teacher.
But you've got to have more of a diversity. You'd have
Yes.
more of a diversity, and you
We
would
want
have more,
diversity
you
and
know,
language.
More options.
First of all, we need to learn cultural diversity. Teachers should know little about the languages they're teaching. We should know little about the different West Indian islands.
Sure.
Sometimes the own West Indians don't understand the
I
different
completely
cultures of
Makes
West
sense.
Indies.
Makes
Well, we are out of
absolute sense.
time,
We
but
are.
I want to give you at least 30 seconds to let the audience know, where they can find you and why they should vote for you.
Well, you could find me at the number 772-1571. That is my home number, and I'm also in the book. And why I should be on the board is because, as a senior, I respect seniors very much. I think an older person or a senior has a lot to give back to the community in their wisdom, their knowledge, their experience, their nurturing, etc., etc., etc. And I think we need to, that's why I would feel I would do very well on the board and help teachers and students.
Mr. Levine, thank you so
Good
much for being on
luck
the
to
show.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Mr. Levine.
You're wonderful.
We
Thank
will
you.
be back with Mr. Kassan Baptiste. Good evening and welcome back. I guess we're still here on VI Voices as we have candidates from the Board of Education. With us right now we have Mr. Kassan Baptiste, who is seeking a seat on the Board of Education in the 2012 election. Mr. Baptiste, thank you for being on the show with us tonight.
And I thank you for inviting me here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why you want to be on the Board of Education.
Hi, I am 37 years old, Kassan Baptiste. My reasons for seeking a seat in the Board of Education: in 2007, I was voted the parent of my son's 4 years of high school at the St. Croix Central High School, being an active member in the FBLA community, being an active member in this community period, and my final reason for seeking that seat is that I raised a young man from the age of 8, and he's now 23 as an honor roll student at the Full Sail, University in Orlando, Florida.
Congratulations.
So what do you think, that's a great achievement. What do you think you can bring to the Board of Education?
Bringing to the Board of Education, first of all, parents. We need to know that you need to know your rights, okay? Parents, you are the key to the success of your kids, along with the board assisting the parent to become successful. Communication, that's it, it's the key to success.
But Mr. Baptiste, some would say the Board of Education don't have any power. They lack any sort of
Any
governance,
teeth.
any teeth to actually effectuate any sort of change at any level within the school or within children's lives. How do you think about going about changing that?
Well, if I am elected in this year, Board of Elections, my first thing will be to sit with the governor to form a government board. The Board of Education needs to be a full-fledged staff. That's number one. The members of the board need to be staffs of the government. It needs to be an office, and the governor
Now,
needs
when
to
you say staff,
understand.
let me make sure that's what you're saying.
Staff.
Yeah.
Staff with salary.
let me make sure I understand
When
what
you
you're
go
saying.
to America,
Right.
the Board of Education is a staff of the government.
Right, but that's because the Board of Education, those other places they act on their own. They have their own authority. It's not like it is here, meaning they hire, they fire, they do everything.
And that's where I'm coming to.
Okay.
The Board of Education needs to take over the Department
Okay.
of Education.
Then we're on the same
and
page
keep
for
the
that.
politics out.
Then we're on the same page.
So you're talking about changing the system from a flat system and have a
Changing it completely around.
So the state, which is the Department of Education, will do state function, and the local management of the school will be the Board of Education.
The Board of Education.
Then we're on the same page.
No problem.
I enjoy that. We're on the same page.
No,
Why do you think that can be more effective though than what we
It
have
is
now?
going to be more effective because the teachers will understand their role, the parents will understand their role, and the students will understand the role. Then when we get to talking about our superintendents and all of that, they will understand how serious the board is. And we are not playing, we are there to educate young men and young women. We don't have the time for the kicking out, and we need to implement structure. You know, we need to implement
But how do
structure.
we do that? You know, there's a question on Facebook where they asked in regards to the misuse of government funds, and whether that has played a role in what we have going on in our community today with our young people and all the violence that we have. What is your position on that?
My position on it is that we are misusing government funds, first of all. Then I will begin to get technical and in politics, but I hate politics. But when you have a governor that using monies to build fence, and you have a governor that takes away your taxes to do extra other curriculum activities on his behalf, those things are jail work for me. It's plain and simple.
Well, it's jail work for a lot of people.
I look at it this way, as when you have government funds to be used, it needs to be used what they were implemented for. We have too many high salaries here in the Virgin Islands that are unnecessary. We have senators that have their kids that are in offices that's $55,000, where that salary could have been bussed in too to pay somebody else. You can live here off of, yes, $25,000, $30,000.
Let me ask you,
$65,000.
let me ask you this
you are.
question, Mr. Baptiste. When, as far as we were talking about high salaries and areas, so that the audience is clear and everybody is clear. In the Department of Education, you have curriculum instructor of this and director of curriculum instruction for this and all this other stuff. And then you have the Board of Education, who, if I understood correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the entity that kind of creates the curriculum and does different things.
Yes.
Why aren't those positions merged? Why does the Department of Education have to pay somebody $80,000, $90,000 to the director of curriculum instruction?
Politics.
When we have the Board of Education, who is actually the entity that creates the curriculum?
It boils down to politics and who's friends with who. That's what it simply boils down to. So changing the structure of the Board of Education will eliminate the unnecessary spending and positions we have here in the government that will be able to create more funds to pay more teachers for the
No, you
Department
know I
of
like
Education.
that. You know I like that.
No, but
So,
I'm
yeah.
a parent, and I'm a parent, and one of the things I notice is apathy of parents. Now, sometimes I show up to PTA meeting. Sometimes I don't, because I don't like the rah-rah that takes place in the meeting. Just ask me to come to my child's school, to meet with the teacher, I do that, collect report card, talk to them, do that. Now, what, how do you go about changing apathy of parents and bringing them out to be fully active in their child's academic career?
Okay, first of all, we have a law here in the government that allows parents 2 hours to go to the school for your
Per
child.
month.
2 hours is not enough. It is definitely not enough, especially if you have to go and visit 7 teachers. Because you have 7 teachers that your child has to see on a daily basis or weekly basis. Your child might be doing okay in this one class. It might not be doing good in the next. That teacher might need your attention for an hour as the parent. There it is, but you only have 2 hours. It already takes you, what, approximately 15 to 20 minutes, a half an hour to get to the school. That's out of your 2 hours. So the first thing we need to do is implement a longer period of time to allow parents to go to the school.
But is that
Would the
something?
longer
But is that
period
something the Board of Education can do?
Yes. Yes,
They can.
They
I would
can intervene. Board of Education is actually for the rights of the children and their parents.
But Mr. Baptiste, my thing about it is, now what do you say to me, who's an employer, about, I'm now giving you 4 to 8 hours a week. Now what about
It's a month.
loss of a month?
A month.
What about productivity at the workplace? Couldn't technology assist parents in actually interacting with their teachers?
Yes, by emails, by contact numbers, visitation. Yes.
Which we don't have the money to do.
No, but hold on, wait a minute, we don't
Because
have
I
money
just
to-
came back from North Carolina, visiting my sister, and my niece goes to high school there, and they have just a great system in North Carolina where they have specialized high schools where you can either go to a regular high school where you're just gonna go to college, what you're gonna do, but they have specialized high schools, high school of medicine, high school of dentistry, high school of engineering. And if you know kind of where you want to go, then you go to that specific high school. My niece, of course, wants to be a dentist, so she's at the high school for medicine. But every single student at the school has received a laptop that they have to use with codes, and the teachers and the student and the parent all communicate through the system. Now, we should have the money to do all of those things, but the issue is we don't have.
But hold on, wait a minute. Don't we have a database system at most of these schools? Once upon a time, wasn't it called SASE?
Yeah,
no,
we still have it, but it's not being used the way it's supposed to be used.
Thank you, but you're saying it's not being used correctly. But who said that particular system doesn't have the capabilities of doing all of those things that you're talking about?
It probably does, but there needs to be the funds to keep it going. And the problem is that they don't have the funds.
But
they don't have the funds. Well, meanwhile, I ain't know you. But they don't have the funds to do what they're supposed to do, or the funds are not being properly placed where they should be.
Or maybe it's just a lack of priority.
No, but even not doing that. Let's say we bought the system, but we bought the system up front. Usually it comes with training. Are they actually training teachers and parents to utilize the system fully? Because they can send emails out, and so you
I know some teachers are doing it because they do have that system. But we just got to in the high school section.
All the teachers have the laptop.
But it's just really not getting it. But I want to ask one other question before we wrap up. I know we're running out of time. Last time on the show, I made a comment in regards to board education and qualifications for them, and as to whether or not there should be people on the Board of Education who have degrees that meet what the Board of Education requires. So if you're going to be on a Board of Education, certifying teachers, setting curriculum, should you have degrees in those areas or in an area you're going to be working in order to be there? Do you think that that's something that should be done, or will be counterproductive to the message that the board is trying to get for our students?
I think that it will be counterproductive. I think that the Board of Education members just need to stand up for what's right. They need to be members who will fight for what we believe in, like myself, what we believe in when it comes in terms of education. It doesn't necessarily have to mean you have to be in education to be a member of the Board of Education. It's just simple common sense, knowledge, communication. That's the key to success.
Mr. Narcisse, we're out of time, but I want to give you at least 30 seconds to wrap up and let everybody know where they can find you and why they should vote for you.
Okay, you can find me at 220-2500. And the reason why that I am asking for this public to truly give me the opportunity in the 2012 election for the Board of Education is simply because I am there for the students. I am there for you, the parents. And we need changes, we need young minds, we need energy, communication, and I'm going to continue saying the key to success is education.
Thank you so much for being on the show tonight, all right? We will be back with Ms. Attorney Marshall Webster. Good evening, and we are back here at VI Voices as we have candidates for the Board of Education for the 2012 election here with us tonight, and we have with us now Attorney Marshall Webster, who is seeking a seat on the Board of Education for the 2012 election. Welcome, Attorney Webster.
Thank you.
And so let's first start off with explaining, kind of who you are and why are you seeking office?
All right. Presently, I'm a lawyer. I do mostly trials, criminal defense work. I do other types of cases as well. Why am I seeking a position in the department, the Board of Education, is because, one, I've represented children before the Board of Education. I also represent a lot of young men charged with crime here in St. Croix for the last 20 years or so. And I believe, I'm almost certain, that there's a correlation between violent crimes and education.
I completely agree with you.
And I know that because I know who my clients are. I know the ages. I know how far they went in school. I know their parents. I know the communities in which they live. I know the schools they went to. I know the schools they were kicked out of. I know the reasons they drop out. and I know a lot more that I cannot disclose.
Right.
But
yeah.
Attorney Webster, I like that about there's a correlation between violent crime and education. And we know when you dissect the education and the factors that are impacting education, there are going to be other things within that education as well. One of the things is parents and the home. How do you, because if you can't impact the home and change things that are taking place in the home, you may not even be able to change that child and the fortunes of that child. How do you hope to help families really change and grow and to appreciate education?
First of all, we as a community have an obligation, not because a child has a constitutional right to an education, but we as a community have an obligation to make sure that every child graduates from high school. We have an obligation to make sure that every child that is experiencing problems in school, whether it's the problems at home, whether the child has a learning deficiency, whether the child, whatever, behavioral issues, we have an obligation to find the services necessary. We have the mental health, we have human services, and we have other services that are available to our children. The Department of Education is not the only place or resource that is available for children that are having problems in school. And the parents also, they have avenues besides the Department of Education, such as human services. They're supposed to provide services as well. Department of Health, Department of Mental Health, and whatever services that are available. And there are private services also that provide assistance to parents and to schools.
Why is there such a deficiency in providing those services? And if you get on the board, how would you turn that around to make it more effective?
Well, I'm not an island, first of all, and I don't have the solution to every problem. Okay? And I know that if I get on the board, I'll have to work with people who are already on the board. I know that there's a system already in place. The board has been since 1992, or I believe, or 91, I'm not sure. It's been in place, and they've been struggling for power with the Department of Education since then. They've made some progress in that area. What I intend to do is to work with whoever is on the board to make sure, and my aim is to make sure that every child gets the services that they need and they get it in time, not when it's too late.
I think you're talking about having an integrated approach to education.
We have to.
But how do you work to integrate all of these governmental entities in the educational system? Because you know there's some level of arrogance on certain areas. How do you bring everybody together and make sure that they provide the services to families?
I see that because I represent, I'm a person who supervises juvenile delinquents. I got students who were juvenile delinquents who had problems in school, and when they came under my mentorship, they've gone to college. Some of them have gone in the Navy, in the military, in different places. Some of them are parents now, and they've succeeded. Not all of them, okay? Some of them have fallen by the wayside. But we have all kinds of programs. We have the mentorship. It's another important factor. We don't use that enough. When we have children, let me say this, there are a lot of children now, and the issue is anger. Why are they angry? We don't know why they're angry, but it could be because of the lack of relationship with a particular parent, and mostly is the father, okay? And they channel that anger into negative things. But we have the Public Defender's Office, we have the Attorney General's Office, we have the Police Department, we have, I don't mention mental health service. These are all services that are available. And we have private lawyers like myself, Mr. Henderson, Emile like yourself, who may be a father to children who are already grown. And you could mentor children as well. We have people who have skills, carpenters, electricians, mechanics, because we don't expect all our children to go to college and have a college education. But what we want to make sure that when a child comes out of high school, that he knows what he's going to do, where he's going to go, and that it's going to be productive in our community.
No, I'm glad you said that, because I remember growing up, my grandfather would always say to us that when they were graduating from high school, every student, whether you were going to college or not, had to graduate with a trade. And it was done because, so you're always able to do something if you didn't have a job. So if you went to college, going to be a lawyer or that, whatever, it didn't matter. If you're going to graduate, you either have to learn how to fix a car, you'll be an electrician, you'll be a plumber, you have to do something. And for some reason, we have kind of moved away from as if being in a vocation is somehow less than going to college and having an education.
Well, I think that is what the trend is. People somehow think that if their child is not geared towards academics and going to college, that it's not as, it's more important than if the child decides to go into vocational education.
But there's some plumbers and electricians that makes more money than lawyers.
I agree with that, and I just don't think that you need to force a child, because not every child is made out for college. Not every child wants to go to college. You may be wasting that child's time and your money by forcing them to go to college because that's what the parent wants. But what I'm concerned about is the importance, if any, of the vocational education curriculum implemented versus academic curriculum, and what changes can be done there so that there's not so much of an emphasis on academics and more of a balance between the two.
And I have to say this. I think you sum it up by saying, I'm going to sum up what you presented to me in terms of, you're saying that every child should at least have a high school diploma.
I agree.
And that's what you're telling us.
That we have to do that. We have to make sure. They had, George Bush came up with No Child Left Behind. I think
it's a disaster.
Yeah, that was a disaster. I don't know if they
it still is a disaster.
But
it really happened.
Not a high school education based on social promotion, though, right?
No, I'm talking about, there are children, okay, who have behavioral issues in school. I know that for a fact because I mentor some of them. And some of the behavioral problems stem from the fact that they may be slow in school in certain areas. Some may know math very well, but you give them a book to read, they can't read. But they could do anything you can do, or even more on your computer, but they can't read. But it could stem from something like dyslexia, something that has not been diagnosed, and then that child is left by the wayside, and then where does he end up? In the criminal justice system.
But doesn't that fall under special education needs? I mean, the faith-free public
if you are able to determine that they need this,
exactly.
That's not happening.
No, but hold on, before you go, Mr. Webster, and that's what we're getting at. But how do you change the views of parents to self-identify and seek out those services? Because we have a stigma when it comes to special education. But special education follows children almost all the way throughout their lives, and there are benefits attached to being a special education, a child of special education.
But we got to make the distinction between special education and certain learning disabilities. A learning disability doesn't make you a special
That's correct.
person.
No,
because a person, especially with dyslexia, is not a special education person. That person could use the different side of the brain that you use, and that child could exceed what that teacher is teaching them every night.
But I think what Clint is basically asking is, how do we help parents to self-assess whether the child have needs, and to want to be able to understand what power they hold by law to make sure that their child gets the needs that they want.
But before you answer that,
that's a good question.
You understand, you said learning disabilities, but most of the services for those learning disabilities fall under special education.
And that's the problem.
And so how do you get parents to empower themselves to seek out those services and say, okay, even though those services are in special education?
That's a very good question. What I think is that when it comes to education, I think the teacher is the professional. The teacher will identify a deficiency. But when the teacher does identify the deficiency, there must be an evaluation to determine what the deficiency is. You have to diagnose what the problem is. And you have to bring the parent, okay?
It's not the IEP, or they do an IEP?
Well, they do an IEP, but the question is, can an IEP diagnose every situation?
But isn't that where the various professionals, the psychiatrists, the psychologists...
But you got to get there first. You got to get there first. If you don't get there, then it doesn't
The teacher has to identify the situation.
IEP comes after the diagnosis. That's the tool.
But at that stage, the parent is involved with
we are running out of time. We're out of time. But I want to give you at least 30 seconds to let people to know where they can find you and why they should vote for you in 2012.
Well, you can find me in Frederickstead.
I remember we give you 30 seconds, Marshall.
All right, thank you. Frederickstead, that's where I'm located, next to the public library. That's my law practice. Don't look for me in any other place. Except in court, the district court or the local courts. Why? Well, I think that I would have something to contribute in terms of these youths that I'm representing now, knowing where they come from. And what we need to do is prevent the type of violent crimes that we're seeing here taking place on these islands. And I think the only way to do that is to start with education. And we start with identifying children's problem from a very early stage, and we do everything we can do, including involving all public services, plus private services, and you can bring in private people, carpenters. I'm pretty sure a lot of these people will be glad to be mentoring.
I think actually we're all stakeholders in this.
Exactly.
And so we want to make sure everybody goes out, whoever they vote for, whoever you vote for, go out in November and vote. That's what's going to be important. Attorney Webster, thank you so much for being on the show with us tonight, and we wish you much luck.
Thank you very
much. All right, we'll be back in a moment. And we are back, and I think tonight's show was very informative. I think that our audience will have an ability to really make some decisions, but I want to say one quick thing that I neglected to say in the beginning of the show. I left out Winona Hendricks, who is also running for re-election with the Board of Education. We did speak with her. She happens to be off island today and was unable to be here tonight. So that's why she is not here. And so hopefully at some point, if we do get another chance, we can probably bring her back or get them on the show.
And what I liked, I mean, I love diversity, but for some reason tonight we had all males. Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah. And that's a good thing. Yeah. I think that's a good thing because
and from different
perspectives and backgrounds. And I thought that was really, I like that diversity.
Perspectives, age
everybody
groups.
had different things that taken off.
But if you look at the two shows that we have on the Board of Elections and the Board of Education, we have to say we are progressing, we are moving forward because we're actually getting a great cross section of good candidates.
No establishment candidates.
Yes, I love that.
And that's what I thought was very, very good.
I love that.
But that lends ourselves into a new campaign that we are doing here at VI Voices and RTD, which is the Rock Your Voice campaign. Yes, the Rock Your Voice campaign, which is a political empowerment and voters registration campaign. And the mission, of course, is to raise awareness for the political power possessed by the people of the Virgin Islands, both young and old, who are eligible to vote. And our purposes of this campaign is to restore confidence of discouraged and frustrated Virgin Islanders who are turned off from exercising their voting rights due to broken promises and consistent disappointment from our elected officials. And through this campaign, we're hoping to get people to engage more in the voting process, to register in the voting process, and to really become aware. And we're hoping that as we do this campaign, we will reduce the apathy that we have in our community. So rock your vote, rock your voice as we go through this election cycle.
And we want more and more young people to come out there, get registered if you aren't from the time you make 18, because your vote is your power.
Absolutely. And we're going to have a lot of events that we're going to do here at RTD for individuals who are running for office, and your ability to be able to meet with them. Because we think we have to meet with these people, you have to see them, you have to talk with them, so you're able to make an informed decision on who you're going to vote for. We have got to stop this. Well, I've known him for a long, long time, so I'll vote for him. Well, I've known her for a long, long time, we got to vote for her. And so that's what we're
all right, guys, that's a whole nother show. Time to wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it.
Make sure you go out and rock your voice.
That's right.
And continue to watch VI Voices, because remember, your voice can make a difference. Good night.
Good night.